This is Chip Dodd from Support Services. I made a couple changes to my overtime calculation spreadsheet to better explain the challenge that we're trying to solve with Paylocity's overtime calculation. First of all, I am starting off with the Department of Labor Fair Standards Act final rule to come up with these calculations. This is not Chip's idea. This is the Department of Labor. I'm just trying to help Paylocity come into compliance so that my company is calculating overtime correctly. If you look at this slide, it's one of the more complicated slides. It's got a scenario where this $10 employee makes 43 hours during that week. He got a $50 non-discretionary bonus. It's like a performance bonus. And then the overtime calculation is completed. And then he's also given a $25 discretionary bonus, which is not factored into their overtime. Comes up with the $521.74 total due for that week. I used this order of operation to come up with this spreadsheet. You can see the same 43 hours, the same 10 bucks, the same $50 bonus. And if you come down to the bottom, you can see the same discretionary bonus and the total pay is $521.74, exactly like what they said. The green areas are data entry points and all the red are equations. But of course you can click on the equation and you can see, what numbers were factored into that equation. So basically, I've done the math for you. I just need to see how can the custom calc team at Paylocity come up with the same math for our paychecks. One other thing I added, the way the Department of Labor does it is they do the straight pay first, paying the employee their normal rate times the full 43 hours. All that's owed to the employee in overtime is the half, not the straight pay, because they've already paid this straight pay. So if you look over here, that's 1674. That's just the half. The employee is not used to seeing just the half. They're used to seeing, their normal 40 hours and then the 3 hours times 1.5 of their pay rate. So what I did here is I added these boxes that shows what would be displayed to the employee for that work week on their paycheck, right? So it's gonna be the 446 and the 50 in overtime. So if you look at the 446, it's just the straight pay. Um, it's the straight pay and including the bonus because that is factored in to their straight pay. And then the overtime pay, you can see how I came up with that. Their average pay rate times the 3 hours um, times the 1.5. So if you notice, these two numbers here equal the 496.74, which is the same 496.74 here prior to the discretionary bonus being added on to get to the 521. Okay, now for the demonstrations, this was a situation where they worked for the $10 an hour and they got the $50 bonus like the Department of Labor said. But we also have to take into consideration that sometimes there's dual pay rate site. And how would that calculation look to come into compliance with the Department of Labor? So in the second week of this pay period, instead of giving them a discretionary bonus, I gave them the bonus in the form of hours worked at a site where they made $15 an hour instead of 10. Let's pretend this service location B, the individuals there that needed services have COVID. And so we're going to give them a $5 extra amount onto their base rate of $10 to say thank you for going into this dangerous location. So in this situation, the person worked 33 at site A that had no COVID and 10 hours at site B that has COVID, and we're going to give them the $15 rate. So if you notice, that's an extra $5 per hour times $10, which equals 50 bucks. So instead of giving them the bonus here, I'm giving it to them in the form of this hazard pay. So if you notice, the straight pay is 480, straight pay over here is 430, but they got the bonus here ending up in 480. Over here, it's still 480. So the cool thing about this, in this scenario, the calculations are identical at this point because the order of operations has been done properly. And so when it comes down to figuring out how much overtime does this guy get, all of that calculation now occurs post this straight pay calculation. So according to the Department of Labor, it doesn't matter if they were given a performance bonus or given a higher rate at a second service location. All of this comes up to the same exact straight pay number prior to the overtime calculation being done. So the overtime that they are owed is identical on both sides. So also what they would see on their paycheck is identical on both sides, because the bonus and the extra money put into their paycheck per hour, it's all basically the same thing. It ends up being part of their regular pay prior to the overtime being calculated. So if you notice, everything here is identical. I'm at the exact same 524.74 that we came up with in the Department of Labor's thing. But now the problem is, and this is where Paylocity is having a lot of trouble. How do we display this to the employee? Employees don't want to see 1674 in overtime. They want to see the 50.23 in overtime. They also want to see their discretionary bonus, and they also want to see that they got their performance bonus. But that's all been already calculated into their base pay rate. So somehow we have to tease this information out to get it to show up on their paycheck properly. So if you look down here, this 1043 is the combination of these 2 weeks. This would be the total amount they would be paid based on all of these calculations. But what the employee needs to see on their paycheck, they want to see their regular hours that they were worked. In this scenario, it was an 80. They want to see their overtime, which was 6 because it was 3 on both sides. They want to see their regular pay, which is basically, if you double click the numbers, it's these two regular pay numbers here. But caution, that regular pay includes the $50 discretionary bonus. So it's already been included in. Then we had to do their overtime calculation, right? That's this 50.23. I'm not using the 1674 because that's just the half. The employee wants to see the time and a half. So I had to back out that extra 3 hours of straight pay and add it in over here. Okay, they want to see that they got a performance bonus, but I put on here, this number is not included in the calculation below, meaning this number here. I could not just add it in because it's already been added in up here in their straight pay. But they want to see it on their check. They want to see that bonus to make sure they got it. They also want to see that they got a discretionary bonus, right? That's going to be the 25 and the 25. So if you notice, the 1043.49 is the exact same 1043.49 here. But to get to this number, I had to add up the 893 plus the 100 plus the 50 and ignore this 50 because that 50 was already included in their base rate. That's how I got to this number. So this is what would show up on the employee's paycheck so that they know that they were paid properly. But these are the way that these calculations had to be created. I realize this is complicated. I don't know another way around it. I'm simply following the Department of Labor's calculations and then trying to convert it back into what the employee is used to seeing. It's the same exact amount of money. It's just displayed differently. Hopefully all this makes sense. I look forward to seeing you guys on the call to see if we can recreate this in the back end calculations of Paylocity. Thanks.